Today I'm going to show you how to properly set up your yoke in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. We'll cover control, bindings, sensitivity and most importantly adjustments to make before your flight. In Microsoft Flight Simulator you can click right here on the settings icon and click on controls. As you see, my current plane that I have selected for this tutorial is the A310-300. If you have your yoke plugged in, you can see here which yoke you have plugged in. I have the yoke, the quadrant and the rudder pedals. For this tutorial we'll cover the yoke and the quadrant. On some yokes the quadrant and the yoke will be in the same setting. However, for this Velocity 1 flight yoke that I have, they are separate, so you need to do the yoke separate and the quadrant separate. I'm now selected on the yoke. Most of the time the yoke already comes pre-configured. However, most of the time people also want to change their own settings. As you see, Turtlebeast already has some basic controls. If you choose by input, for example, they already have the axis, the elevator and the aileron axis. But let's say for example this button 9, does all these things. However, I don't want it to do these things, I want to do something else. Let's say for example instead of these things, I want this button 9, to bring me to the outside mode. Click on the X and search cockpit / external. And you can see here this button is another button. You see this button. However, if I want to do button 9, you can click on scan. If you click on scanning and I click on button, this screen should pop up. I will name this screen A310-300 because this is the plane that we're currently configuring. I click on OK. As you see, the general controls are now the A310-300. And that will mean that if I'm flying the A310-300 on this control, that will mean the button 9 do exactly bring me to the cockpit and external view mode. And for example, let's say if the aileron is not right, you click here on this setting icon and you can invert the axis, for example. Let's say when my yoke turns right but it turns left in the sim, you can click on set invert axis. I don't want that, so I turn it off. You can also tweak the action curve. We need to make another profile for this. This will also be the A310-300. If you click on OK, you see tweak action curve. For example, now you see if I turn, it goes in a straight line. But let's say, for example, I have some dead zone here. You can just turn this dead zone up a bit. For 5, as you see, the line is now not straight. For example, now I can turn my yoke a bit before it's doing anything. You can also change the same for sensitivity. For example, sensitivity to 1. It will be very sensitive at the start and then not so sensitive at the last. And you can do the same for my sensitivity to the minus. That's exactly the same, but mirrored from sensitivity to plus. Also, you can do neutral. For example, neutral, you can see here's neutral and then right here is changed a bit. And the extreme to dead zone you can also change. Now it's nothing, as you see, it's just a straight line. And if you do this, it's also exactly the same. And then you can play around with these controls and find whatever you like. And the same goes of course for your elevator axis. And the same goes for your axis. For example, on this yoke we also have built-in rudder pedals. If you search by input, you can see rudder axis. For this way you can also change the sensitivity to what you like. This is just the same as all the other axes that you have seen before. And if you don't know the name of something, for example, I want to turn on a light but I don't know what the name of the light is, we can just click on light. I know it is exterior light. You can see here toggle lights, beacon lights, all these things. You can just say toggle lights, and if you click on the button, joystick button, it will set the beacon lights on this button. On this screen you can see all the things that have to do with light. And the same goes for all these other things, you just need to find in what area they are. I click on the landing gear, for example, wheel steering, nose to sync, and for example this axis. And with that you can configure these things however you like, even if you don't know the name. And for the quadrant it's almost the same. For example, let's say this one right now has nothing, but I want this one to change to flaps. You can just search here flaps, and we see here flap axis, so we need to change that. And now we need to again make a new name for this profile. This will also be just the A310-300. And I click on OK. As you see now, the joystick axis is already controlled. You can also fine tune your inputs right here, but that's just the same as every other thing. And this one also does nothing. Let's say for example I want this one to be the gear. You can just search on gear. You can see gear down, set gear, toggle landing gear. Let's say for example I want toggle landing gear. And we can see that that has also accepted the toggle landing gear. So now we can change the axis to change the toggle landing gear. Most of the time with your yoke, if you do your power levers, it will already be inputted. However, for example now this is not inputted. What you can just do is search for throttle, and we can see right here throttle, for example throttle axis. If you don't do throttle axis because you want throttle 1 and throttle 2, because this plane is throttle 1 and throttle 2. So here we see throttle 1 axis, and then we can change the yoke. And the same goes for the throttle 2 axis. You can also change that one. So make sure you don't do the throttle axis. However, if you only have for example one pedal, you can do this. However, most of the time you can just do throttle 1 axis, throttle 2 axis. This just gives it more realism. And if you're flying a small plane, you can do this. For example, throttle axis, you can do this one. There's another axis. This is just for one engine jet. You can just throttle axis for all the engines. And with this, I've covered the basics of how to set up your yoke. If you have any questions, let me know down below in the comments, and I'll see you the next time. Bye bye.